Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Committee on Ordinance. Today is October 16, and the time is 5:54 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Espinal,
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Peterson,
Present.
Councilwoman Harris is absent, Councilman Vargas,
Present.
Councilor Royas.
Present.
You have 4 present and 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you. If you are here to testify, please make sure you signed in, and we will be taking your testimony shortly. I'm going to ask Madam Clerk that we stand at ease for about 10 minutes. Thank you. so much once again. Our deepest apologies. We did have some inconvenience, and that took us from where we were. To start out with, I'll tell you that we will continue this meeting. No decision will be made tonight. We'll continue till next Monday, October 21st at 5:30. So, but tonight, we will be taking your testimony, which are very valuable to us. With that, Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda, please.
Item number 1 is an ordinance adopting the City of Providence's official comprehensive plan.
Thank you. And we have Mr. Bob Azar from the Department of Planning presenting. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Robert Azar, Deputy Planning Director for the City of Providence. We have been working over the past week to consolidate some of the changes to the document that were discussed at the last meeting and that have been put into the record. And there are a couple of things that I just want to bring to your attention about the current state of the plan. First of all, I want to mention that the plan is online at the City Council's homepage. So folks will have an opportunity to see the plan with all the red lines in it on the City Council's homepage. So I just am going to briefly describe some of the changes, and I believe Aaron Eastergardner will describe some of the other changes. First of all, because some of the strategy, the objectives and strategies have changed through this process, we had to update the implementation table in Appendix C. Appendix C describes all of the responsible parties and the timelines for implementing all the objectives and strategies. So that's been updated. We have made minor text edits to correctly refer to the I-195 district. Apparently they changed their name from the I-195 Innovation and Design District, so we made that change.
Thank you.
And I mentioned last time we had a series of map changes to the future land use map and the proposed zoning changes. There are a couple of minor changes since then. I had said that there was a proposal to change the zoning for 173. I had said 193 Ives. I misspoke. It's actually 173 Ives. Okay. So we made that change. And also at the request of Councilman Gonzalez, there is a further change for the property at 639 Wickenden to be rezoned to C2. That's in Ward 1. Also in Ward 12, I believe we had omitted another area of National Register District. Those are the Andrew Dickhout cottages on Bath Street. We are proposing that those will stay R3, the same as the other National Register districts in that ward. And then finally, we have changed the labeling on the growth strategy map to adjust the font size of the label for the jewelry district. And I think that's all I have for you. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any question from our committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
And next we'll have our policy team, Mr. Aaron Eastergardner and Mr. June Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. Today I just have two specific changes that I wanted to read the language into the record. So first and foremost, on the document that is online, as Bob mentioned, I think we have page 32, which is under H3, special needs housing. We're adding language for K, which replaces the old language, and I'll read this into the record now. adopt policies supporting the city's unhoused residents, including but not limited to providing temporary use permits for emergency shelters, improving outreach and social services to encampments, developing permanent housing options, ensuring access to mental health and substance use treatments, or other innovative solutions in housing safety and public health. And again, that's page 32, H3K. And additionally, there were some modifications to the language that was related to M2, Industrial District, and W3, the port with specific uses. And we had this language that I'm about to read, we actually added, under, to speak directly to M2 and for W3. So I'll read it right now. The city may prohibit future industrial uses in the General Industrial District, M2, that it determines go against the public interest of A, public health and quality of life in near industry neighborhoods, or B, realizing fossil fuel emissions reduction goals in response to climate change, and will encourage future industrial uses that promote environmentally just development and a just transition for workers currently maintaining fossil fuel dependent infrastructure and industry. Future M2 prohibited industrial uses may include, but are not limited to, facilities that import, store, process, or distribute fossil fuels, facilities that import, store, manufacture, or distribute flammable, hazardous, or explosive chemicals or waste products, facilities that generate or result in harmful air pollution emissions, facilities that produce high carbon emissions or import and distribute high carbon content products, and facilities that generate water pollution, including both point source and stormwater runoff pollution. And additionally, this section shall not apply to publicly owned treatment works. Future M2 encouraged industrial uses include, but are not limited to, offshore wind development and associated activities, solar electricity generation, battery energy storage facilities, microgrid infrastructure, electric infrastructure for ship-to-shore plug-in power and charging electric zero-emissions trucks, food and commercial goods imports, storage, and distribution that can be run on zero-emission electrical infrastructure, and vocational education facilities to support workforce workforce development for a just transition to a green economy. And again, that the same language is added for uses in W3 and in M2. So that completes the language that we added that we wanted to share today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any question from committee members? Councilman Vargas.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I see that you reading on page 31. We'll go all the way to letter S and letter T. Work with the community development. Which neighborhoods are most vulnerable and insurable? They are prioritized for affordable housing development. Then you go to letter U, page 32. Advocate for stronger tenant protection for renters who are defined as being the most vulnerable to displacement. You're right about the tenants. We want to do anything that we can have in our powers to protect them. But what about when we have a bad tenant? Doesn't want to pay the rent? They start breaking the apartment? They start breaking the fridge, start breaking the microwave, making holes in the wall, and then a month later he will walk away and say, thank you very much. That repair will cost you at least between $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. I don't see any protection here for the property owner. What is your answer?
Well, so my answer would be that, obviously in this, language here is really to, address or at least ask the city to just advocate for changes, mostly at the state level, because at the local level there are, limited things the city can do. But my answer would honestly be, Councilman, within the, landlord and tenant handbook at the state level, I mean, the powers for, a landlord are, outlined there, such as security deposits, et cetera, that I know you're aware of. But outside of that, we're not speaking to make any changes to laws on the state level, but at the same time, that doesn't say we can't advocate for things that are proper.
Yeah, if I could just add, it's our understanding that any matter here is related to tenant protections is a state matter, and that's why the language was chosen for advocate for tenant protections. But of course, Aaron and I sit here presenting amendments that came from city councilors, and so I think if that was a request for amendment, we should definitely talk about it further. But this package of amendment came from councilors, including that one, and that request isn't one that we had received for our package.
I wonder what these colleagues or councilors are meaning by tenant protection, like renters, like what protection they looking for? Like they looking for them not to be displacement, or for them to, what is the reason?
Mr. Chairman,
Council President Miller?
Councilman, I'm very happy, although this amendment wasn't something that I proposed, I'm very happy to speak a little bit about the kind of protections I hear from renters in terms of not having, right? So things that I hear from renters, and I'm a renter myself, although I enjoy a very positive relationship with my landlord. So some of those include, every winter, including actually last night, when there was a really horrible fire in my neighborhood, I get calls from renters who don't have heat, don't have locks on their doors, don't have access to some basic protection. I think that we all have some neighbors who have seen really big rent increases, right? Not like a regular, and we know better than anyone else what taxes are, right? Because we pass the budget, and we can expect a year-to-year slight increase. But in the last couple of years, I've had neighbors who, there was a woman who lives on the street one over from me. Her rent increased $800 with 30 days notice. So I think that one of the nice things about presenting a plan that's kind of in vision form, right? That's sort of charting a path forward for our city, is that we get to say things like strengthen tenant protections. And by saying that, we are committing ourselves to do work together to make sure that we do that, right? Whether it's at the State House, whether there's things in existing law, working with DIS, even on procedural things, so that we're strengthening protections for everybody. And I think there's actually quite a bit in the overall comp plan that speaks to property owners as well, both in terms of creating more freedom for them to develop on the land that they have, to ensuring that the neighborhood and character of the neighborhood retains all of the things that make Providence beloved. So I think, and I thank you all for your work that you've done so far. This is public hearing number 4 on this matter, right? I really do thank you. Like this is the opportunity to talk about the vision. And then by doing so, we commit ourselves to doing that work together on behalf of our neighbors.
Thank you very much, Council President.
Thank you.
Can I, Chair? Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I am afraid by putting a lot of stuff, the property owner will say like, thank you very much for your lease, but your lease is over. I need my apartment back. And then we're going to be displacing people because a lot of things that we're doing here, a lot of vision that we put in, a lot of regulation that we're trying to put to protect one side only and forget about the other side. But don't forget the other side is the property owner. He might say, thank you very much. I won't be able to rent to you no more because so many rules I had to follow. I'd rather have my apartment empty than give it out. So we have to be careful how we go with these new rules and new laws that we're trying to do for the next 10 years. That's what I'm trying to figure out. It's something that has to be a balance. Because as a taxpayer person who has a property, and the administration is not going to think twice to raise the taxes, because the administration needs to make a budget. And who's going to be paying at the end? The property owners who pay taxes. That's the reason.
Thank you, Mr. Vargas. Councilman Royas.
Thank you, Chair. To sort of add to this discussion, I think this is I think the Council President was mentioning this. This is a visionary document, and then there's reality, which are the preemption laws that are baked into state law, which is the Landlord-Tenant Act. And so there are some things that we'd probably like for it to happen. We hope that we reach a future where it does happen, but we might be prevented to move forward with some visionary things because of preemption laws at the state level. But in terms of one thing that I think is feasible and I support is and I believe it's in the conversation around anti-displacement measures. I want to just note on page 31, we mentioned something called inclusionary zoning, which is a tool, in my view, that is very much so in the conversation around anti-displacement. It forces developers that if they want to take advantage of a tax subsidy, that they must include deed-restricted affordable housing in their developments. And so, in my view, that is separate from the Landlord-Tenant Act. I think that is something that we should be proud about, and again, we included it on page 31. But I just want to add to that, Councilor, in terms of the conversation around displacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Royas. Before we continue, I'd just like to acknowledge Councilwoman Graves, Althea Graves, who is here tonight. Thank you for being here. Councilwoman Anthony, thank you so much. And of course, our Council President, Rachel Miller, as well as Councilman Goncalves. Councilman Sanchez was also here, and our City Solicitor, Eti. Thank you all for being here tonight. City Sergeant, could you please bring the list of everyone that has signed up? And before we call the next person that signed up, I'll entertain a motion to enter into the regular Exhibit G.
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilor Peterson, and then second by Councilman Oscar Varga. All in favor, aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And our first presenter is James McCauley. Good evening. Everyone will get 2 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity for addressing the committee tonight. My name is Jim McCaughey. I am the Deputy Director of the Narragansett Bay Commission. Narragansett Bay Commission owns and operates the state of Rhode Island's 2 largest wastewater treatment facilities, one being Fields Point Wastewater Treatment Facility at the Port of Providence. The reason I was here tonight, I came here tonight to comment on the portions of the comprehensive plan that deal with the W3 district outside the Port of Providence, where the Narragansett Bay Commission is located. We felt as though the potential prohibitions that were put in the comprehensive plan would critically impede us from doing our job, which is to collect wastewater from the City of Providence, City of North Providence, the City of Johnston, portions of Cranston, and portions of Lincoln, to protect the public health of the communities there and to protect the receiving waters of Narragansett Bay from the pollutants that are in those wastewater. The changes that we asked to be made were very, very well articulated earlier tonight, so I'm not going to get much more into that.
Right.
We do have written comments that would justify why we think these changes should be made, and I would at this point just say if I have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
You guys sent a letter, we read it. You suggested an amendment, and we incorporated that,
Okay,
and we thank you for that.
all right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jennifer Harrington. Thank you. Alex Diaz. Good evening.
Hi there. My name is Alex Diaz Pepkovich. I live at 146 Prospect Street. I'd like to thank the City Council and everyone involved for their hard work on this plan. I'd also really like to speak in support of the amendment to prohibit the development of new gas stations. A lot of people have talked or written about the impacts on the climate, but I wanted to talk about the impacts on health, air, and water quality and the economy. Gasoline contains a lot of toxic chemicals known as BTEX hydrocarbons, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. These are known to cause leukemia and permanent damage to the central nervous system. They can also cause a variety of blood cancers like lymphoma and myeloma. Working or living near a gas station is very bad for your health and really increases the risk of cancer. Gas stations lower property values because people understand that they don't want to live next to those types of chemicals. They hate the traffic that it generates. They're very expensive to clean up once they close down because cities, states, owners, and oil companies always argue about who's responsible for the cleanup. Many lay abandoned for decades as a consequence, contaminating the earth and the water. And I'm not sure if people know this, but the whole reason that the EPA banned certain types of underground gas tanks was because of a toxic leak in Rhode Island in 1983 that poisoned the local water supply. Restricting new gas stations is a move that will save lives, heartache, and money, and will leave everyone better off. I also wanted to talk briefly about parking minimums. I want to encourage the city to eliminate them. I would love for every neighborhood to have small grocery stores and small businesses that aren't hampered by red tape because an arcane rule says they need to dedicate half of their property to temporary car storage. I think parking minimums increase the cost of housing construction, and they lead to oceans of asphalt that pool water and cause flooding when it rains, and they turn neighborhoods into griddles in the hot summer sun. In large parking lots, we're forced to dodge cars, whether we drove there or not, and we have to breathe in their exhaust. The chemicals that I mentioned from gasoline, they float in the air, they mix with all the other fine particulate matter from brake pads, from tire wear. Cars kick up this dust, and then we breathe it in, where it settles into our lungs, it dissolves into our bloodstreams, and it gradually settles in our organs as well, causing a lot of damage. I understand that some places need to have some parking. I think that's totally reasonable. But I also understand that many places do not need any parking at all, and they should not be legally compelled to do so. But other than that, I'd like to thank everyone again for their hard work on this comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Hunter.
Good evening. Chris Hunter.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Providence Working Waterfront Alliance, I just want to thank the council for listening to the concerns of several of the terminals in the port and other businesses like the Narragansett Bay Commission, some of the unintended consequences of the previous language. We still have some concerns, but again, really appreciate you listening and working with us, and hope to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Reese Tompkins.
I would just thank you. My name is Chris Tompkins. I'm a interested resident. I just wanted to quickly follow up on my remarks of October the 9th. On page 2 of the enclosed article, which you can read at your leisure, there's a magical quote that I thought captured everybody's attention and capsulized this issue. There's a private equity gentleman in Chicago, and private equity people are typically quite astute financially. The quote goes, this is a public quote. He says, "There's never a bad time to invest in student housing." How about that? Well, we now have a 170-page document. And this document, in my opinion, gives the green light to more off-campus student housing. Here we go again. During the course of a lot of the preparation for this 170-page document, there were a lot of comments about highlighting Austin, Texas as a template for progressive, higher density progress. Well, on page 5 of this enclosed document, you can get a no-window apartment in Austin, Texas for your college student for $1,500 a month. How about that? That's a real bargain. No window, $1,500. But that's progress. So I do have the good news, because you always have to end up with the good news.
Thank you.
The good news is there are billions and billions of institutional dollars, sophisticated quality money that's sitting on the sidelines that can help redevelop areas of Providence for quality student housing, to re-energize neighbor areas that either have surface parking lots or minimal activity. You can re-energize these areas. The institutions that are benefiting from multi-year, multi-decade pilot agreements should get on board to help redevelop the city, because it's a two-way street. We're all in this together. And so we can connect Wall Street money with the institutions, the city, the residents, and everybody's a winner. And we have to stop cannibalizing thriving existing neighborhoods. It's been going on way too long. We need to celebrate residents. We need to celebrate families. We need to celebrate newcomers that are attracted to our fair city.
30 seconds, Chris.
The other piece of good news is that while this may be construed as a complicated subject, another leading northeastern city has already figured it out. It's codified. There's a fixed number of off-campus housing. There's standards for student behavior. And there are standards for occupancy. So the good news is it's already been figured out. All you have to do is change the name. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, may I?
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
you may.
Mr. Tompkins, I just wanted to thank you. I apologize that I wasn't here last week. I was actually in my community listening into a presentation on behalf of the college about their master plan, their institutional master plan. So I wasn't here to listen to your words, but I did have a chance to play it back. And I felt, I don't think it's unfair to say, I thank you for everything that you said was exactly correct. In the area that I represent, we have over 275 apartments that are now student housing, where they were once thriving apartment units for families that lived in the Chad Brown area, in the Elmhurst area, and in the Wanskuck area. And, you know, people may think it's funny, the conversations of quality of life issues that come with this, and, you know, just the complaints of the excessive partying or the noise and all of those things. But the reality in my neighborhood is that the median rent as a result of student housing is now $3,000 a month. And where families used to live and thrive in a small piece of what some have called a little mini suburbia in the city of Providence, people have been priced out. Families can't find an affordable rent in the neighborhood, and it's as a result of the business model that student housing brings forward in my neighborhood. So when you talk about what student housing does to a city, or even just the nearby areas, the neighborhoods where there are colleges close by, the reality is that it's a multi-pronged problem that doesn't just include quality of life issues. It includes gentrification issues, it includes displacement issues, and it includes our communities getting smaller and smaller and smaller, our voters, our tax base, all of those things. And I just want to thank you for highlighting an issue that we are very much taking a look at. I think we're at a point in this time, I think I've said it before, we have about 25,000 students that come in every single year just to the city of Providence to come and be educated by the wonderful institutions that we have. And just in my neighborhood alone, every single year, we get 1,200, roughly 1,200 to 1,300 or 1,400 new students that come and take in or live in these apartments. And what it does is it creates, and truthfully, we don't have enrollment limits to the colleges or anything along those lines, so those numbers keep climbing no matter how many times we sit and say, you know, we're not exactly sure how much larger the problem is going to be. We do have a considerable situation in what we're doing right now. But I did want to highlight that there is one piece of our master plan that includes further regulation, and it is in section LU3, letter G, and this is something that I very much supported because it allows us to start planning very intensively what student housing is going to look like in our city. And it reads, further regulate uses incompatible with stable neighborhoods, including high-density student housing and short-term rentals. So what it does is it creates the opportunity to create good policy around it. And so I thank you for the opportunity I thank you for sharing with us your concern. This isn't just an issue in Ward 14, it's an issue in several other wards. But we're very much intently looking to create good policy going forward that maintains our constituents here, our taxpayers, and doesn't continue to displace our families any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Cedric Ye.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you again to the city staff for all their work on this plan. My name is Cedric Ye, Y-E. I'm a high school student, and I live at 43 Irving Avenue in Ward 2, and I wanted to speak in strong support of the proposed comprehensive plan. I first wanted to reiterate my strong support for the proposed upzoning, including the legalization of triplexes and small apartments in more neighborhoods, and the legalization of ADUs and row houses citywide. Loosening zoning regulations like this has been endlessly researched and tried in many cities, and it does work at reducing rents and increasing affordability. We will not be able to mitigate our dire housing crisis without this upzoning, so I am really grateful to all of the city councilors who have supported this. I would also like to thank Councilor Gonzalez and this committee for introducing and passing the amendment to prohibit gas stations. And I wanted to urge the committee to support Councilor Miller's proposed strengthening of language around reducing or eliminating parking minimums. They are shown to have a big impact on housing affordability. They many studies say between $200 to $500 a month, and it can make it impossible for many projects to pencil out, but especially affordable housing projects with the $25,000 to $50,000 cost per space of building off-street parking. And they kind of are just very arbitrary. I don't know if planners in the 1960s carefully researched and determined that we have 33% more of a need to drive to a retail store than Pawtucket. So I strongly support Councilor Miller's proposed amendments as a really needed first step, but I think we can and really should go further. Bridgeport, Connecticut and Hartford, Connecticut have much worse transit than us. They're much less walkable. They have almost no bicycle infrastructure, but they have both eliminated parking minimums for all uses citywide, and Providence is in a good position to do the same. So thank you so much for your consideration, and I really hope to see your support for this visionary plan.
Thank you. Councilman Goncalves.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to thank Councilor Peterson for her leadership on this student issue. I think we have so many neighborhoods, as you mentioned, that are trying to address the issue of loud noise, the quality of life issues that we experience in our neighborhoods. And I'm proud to be a representative for Mr. Tompkins in Ward 1. He's experienced this firsthand, and we've interacted a lot on these issues. When you think about the challenges that we're experiencing around student housing, I think we have a lot of work to do. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership. I know PC has been very challenging. In our neck of the woods, Councilwoman Anthony and I, we have to deal with the likes of Brown University students and RISD students, and in my ward also Johnson and Wales students, and the number of complaints that we get from students who are living off campus is really, it's an issue. And we as a council have an extraordinary opportunity to address this issue. And I think we have to lead in very bold ways that address, again, these basic quality of life issues that our constituents are experiencing. I grew up in Fox Point, so I've seen the changes in my neighborhood over the course of 25, 30 years. And I can tell you that that neighborhood looks markedly different from what I remember as a kid. Fox Point was a very, very vibrant community of Cape Verdean, Portuguese, Irish immigrants who have been completely pushed out of that neighborhood. That neighborhood is completely gentrified. Those people have been completely displaced as a result of the increasing enrollment rates from some of our large, non-taxable colleges and universities. And every time I talk to university administrators, and I won't name names here, they can never give you a commitment as to whether or not they are going to cap their enrollment rates. And the byproduct of that is more students in our neighborhoods. And look, I was a Brown University student too, I get it. But the byproduct of the loud noise, the parties, the litter, the not taking out the trash, the undermining of quality of life is something that I think this council needs to seriously address, whether it's in this comp plan or in our zoning ordinance. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I just want to thank Councilor Peterson for being such a strong, strong advocate, particularly for the people in her ward, but citywide as it relates to this issue. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope as a body we'll continue to work vigorously on addressing these quality of life issues.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilor Royes.
Thank you, Chair. I just, a couple of thoughts. I first want to just shout out Cedric. I'm very impressed by you. This might come across as odd, but I've admired you from a distance on Twitter. So keep up the good work. I am very impressed, and you certainly have a future in government, and excited to see how your future blossoms. So I appreciate all your advocacy. And I know sometimes, as I won't consider myself old yet, although I'm feeling that way nowadays, but sometimes when young people come up, we kind of pacify them, but when I say I'm very impressed, I really mean it. You could be doing other things, but you're here testifying, and that means a lot to me. The second thought I wanted to share is regarding student housing. And Mr. Tompkins, I appreciate you coming here again. Your testimonies are compelling. I just want to say, and my colleagues could chime in if they feel this way, but what makes it really difficult to rein in colleges and student housing developers, in my view, the very real way we can do that is through zoning. But unfortunately, we passed a pilot agreement that prevents us, there are clear provisions in this pilot agreement that prevents us from tinkering with the zoning laws. So I don't want to mislead the public here. If we amend zoning laws to prevent the expansion of sort of student growth, we would be in breach of that pilot agreement. And so I don't want to be cynical. I always want to be optimistic, but that is, in my view, something I want to state as public record. I don't like to speak to our residents in platitudes. That is a real challenge. So I just want to share that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Still. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman, committee members. First, I'm missing a sheet of paper, which is not great. That's off to a bad start.
Oh, you found it. That's
We
good.
found it. It's perfect. Thank you for continuing to next week. You saved me a paragraph when I speak to making motions, so thank you. I represent the Jewelry District Association, and I'm here to provide some recommendations. Several of these, we disagree with the language that currently exists. One of them we support. So, no to language that prohibits any new gas stations in Providence. No to any language that eliminates minimum parking for any new residential development. No to allowing by right, in quotes, status to be recommended for consequential proposals. By example, all proposals for new five-story residential buildings. No to any Airbnbs allowed in any residential apartment buildings in Providence. If what we need is year-round housing, then they should not be used for Airbnbs to enrich the owners of the properties. No to awarding height bonuses for activating first-floor spaces in residential buildings. Finally, yes to the creation of a new design review committee as it is envisioned by Councilwoman Anthony. Once the comp plan is passed, I know the council will be turning their focus to the zoning regulations, and we are asking you to pay particular attention to several areas of concern. Here is an example with respect to communication and notices. As someone who regularly participates in many planning department committee meetings, it is clear to me that even our members of the city council are not being notified about specific development proposals in their own wards or neighboring wards. Two other examples. Timing of the notices, clearly there is not enough time, and length of meetings, these committee meetings in hours. These recommendations are only a small sampling of changes that must be made to make these public meetings responsive to all of its residents and neighborhood associations. By example, last night's CPC meeting, clocking in at 5 hours, is the poster child for what's wrong with the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Damel Alberos. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Demel. I live in the Julie District at 125 Clifford Street. I want to thank everyone involved in this plan for their hard work to put this together. I think there's some really good stuff in here, especially after the recent amendments like prohibiting new gas stations and introducing inclusionary zoning. I'm in favor of 5 stories by right in the high density zones and the abolishment of parking minimums citywide. Both of these would have a massive positive impact on our ongoing housing crisis, allowing developers to build taller and allowing them to decide themselves how much parking to provide would boost our housing supply, which we so desperately need. Putting the people and the planet before self-interest and car storage is critical. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Grant Dugarian. Okay, take your time. All right. Lily Bogosian. Good evening.
I am the president of the Fox Point Neighborhood Association, Lily Bogosian. I, again, would like to talk about Wickenden Street, which I spoke of last week, and some of you were not present to hear me talk about that, and my concerns over the fact that much of the development in the Fox Point area is probably maybe 95% is not affordable housing, the new developments that are being proposed over the next couple of years. But what I wanted to say tonight is that our mayor recently asked one of his supporters whether he would rather have all the students live in the Wickenden and Brook Street proposal, which is a 75 apartment unit on the corner of Wickenden and Brook, which, as I've told you, is a very tiny street. It's a two-way street with mature trees. He said, wouldn't you rather have them there than living in houses, historic houses around us? And I think that's pretty outrageous, because it's not either or in this situation. We need to address the needs of all of our citizens. And the notion that we can build a building that is inappropriate on a tiny street on which we have local businesses who are thriving is just not reasonable. I sent you some photographs, I don't know if you received them today, about the fair that was on Wickenden Street on Saturday, and it was, packed. And we do that several times in the course of the year. We bring in tax money, and the local businesses benefit. We bring in tourists, everybody benefits. And it's a small street, so traffic is really not an issue because of that. Right now, we're looking at thousands of new units in Fox Point, and we are in favor of having more housing. We want more housing. But what we are asking on Wickenden, what we are asking specifically of you, is for you to rewrite this little strip of land that is Wickenden Street and downzone it. I know it's a very, very sort of bad thing to say, but the reality is it's the heart of Fox Point, and any of you who have been there know that to be true. All we're asking is that the upscaling on Wickenden Street is done in the same scale that the buildings that are existing now take place, that we don't allow the merging of two little properties to take place. Please, please keep this neighborhood, the heart of Fox Point, intact in that one little area. It is the heart of our businesses, and it's where our Boys and Girls Clubs, our Vartan Gregorian School, it's where our public library is. It is the heart, and it's where we have little kids around and parents who are dropping their kids, and we need that place. We need that one strip between North Main Street, where I-95 has its big parcels, and there's this notion that it's okay to just start moving that in. We've got Gano Street on the other side of that, where thousands of units apparently are going to be built. Last night, 325 new apartments were approved without a master plan. Well, I should say the parking and the height was approved without a master plan. We're asking to just get control a little bit of this little area in Fox Point. And if you do that for us, we will be eternally grateful to the City Council,
Thank
and
you.
we will vote for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Marisa Brown. Grant, you will be next, right after Marisa.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Chairman, city councilors, Tina, who has been responding to all of these emails that we send in and sending back personal emails to thank us for sharing thoughts. So I also wanted to thank you for that. So I'm Marissa Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Providence Preservation Society. I live in Fox Point. I wanted to start off by saying that we are really heartened by the City Council's proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan. The changes that have been suggested
Excuse me, Marisa, excuse
Yeah,
me one second.
sure.
Grant, you can stay right over there. I'm going to send a microphone over to you, and you'll be next, all right?
Great.
Yeah, go,
Sure.
I'm sorry, I
Oh,
apologize.
that's
Go
okay.
right ahead.
Yeah, so we feel that the changes that have been suggested really go a long way to making this plan more equitable, more sustainable, and inject that hard to kind of quantify note of humanity into this plan. We are really grateful. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to the city councilors for your leadership, your vision. And I just wanted to say we support so many of these proposed changes, including the amendments related to Provport, stronger language on reducing or even getting rid of parking minimums, more support for the unhoused, which is so important in Providence, inclusionary zoning, which has already come up, anti-displacement measures, which have come up, and design standards. We would recommend, it's funny that Austin came up actually earlier, we would recommend in particular, in a positive sense, the work that the City of Austin has done to support anti-displacement measures by creating city staff positions whose work is to do that. And we would say there that in Austin, there's actually been a lot of sort of confluence between anti-displacement and preservation. Often those two, those staff positions, those movements are very much working hand in hand to try to support communities. Preservation is not always or should solely be about buildings. It's really about people. It's about helping people stay where they are sometimes. Sometimes preservation is thought of as a gentrifying force. In a city like ours, which has so much historic building stock, not a lot of those, it's not all fancy houses. We're seeing in Atlantic Mills a historic place where potentially rents might go up in the future. Often preservation and displacement, anti-displacement can work hand in hand to keep rents low in places like Atlantic Mills, for example, that are historic and affordable. We are really gratified to see the National Register districts in Smith Hill and Upper South Providence be rezoned to R3. I want to thank the city councilors and the planning department who worked on those changes. I would say that going forward, we really have 3 points. One is we really continue to advocate for further revision to the definition of historic properties in the plan to include all National Register historic districts and landmarks. That probably sounds like we're asking for a lot of places to be included under that historic district definition. It's not. It's really a difference of about 5%. But that really helps. It's an equitable move because so many of the city's local historic districts tend to be in more affluent neighborhoods. The national districts are scattered all over the city. And so we believe that it's important that those districts be acknowledged in the plan as historic districts. The second point has to do with adaptive reuse. We really would like to see the final plan change all the words around adaptive reuse from promoted, considered, encouraged, or being desirable to being prioritized. That, I think, would align this plan much more closely with Providence's climate justice plan. The city of Denver is really interesting case. They have created a staff position called it Adaptive Reuse Project Administrator. That person really helps projects, helps developers, helps city agencies that have historic buildings with the complicated puzzle of how we adaptively reuse them. Third, as we stated previously—
30 seconds, Marie.
Sure, sorry. We believe that the city should establish a design review committee. We are strongly supportive of the design standards amendment, but would also like to see this go further and to see a design review committee established that could help all of us really raise the bar on new developments in Providence. But I really wanted to close by thanking the councilors for the very, very deep, visionary, brave work that you have done on this plan, and we're grateful for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Grant Dugarian. Right there.
Good evening.
Good evening, Grant.
Grant Dugarian. A number of things. One, I commend you for having another hearing next week. It seems like you want to do the job that the City Plan Commission should have done, and not that you don't have anything else to do, like the budget and all these other matters pertaining to city government. But there are 9 sections to this plan. You've heard me say before, we ought to have 9 hearings, 1 on each section, so people can deep dive into each section and make recommendations. The housing and land use obviously are intertwined. And what I've said before, and I will reiterate, excuse me, there are less than 4 dozen census tracts in the city of Providence. In 1950, up to 1950, we were a city of 250,000 people. Between 1950 and 1980, we lost 40% of our population. How did that happen, and where did that happen? We should know that before we decide on what we need to include in our comprehensive plan in order to move ourselves back up. We don't need to be 250,000 people in the city of Providence again, but we could be a little over 200,000. We're up to 190 now. That's commendable. But what happened and where did it happen? That's what we should know so we can make an informed decision on going forward. I have here my 2 census tracts, if someone wants to come and get it and pass it out to the committee. I'm in census tract 33, and next door to me is census tract 32. I would be interested in knowing what the population numbers were for 1950, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2010, and 2020, those 8 census years. I would also be interested in knowing the dwelling units for each of those 8 census years, and I divide dwelling units into 2 categories. One, what used to be called efficiency or studio or 0 or 1 bedroom apartment dwelling units, and those dwelling units that have 2 bedrooms or more. Why? Because, as the councilwoman said earlier this evening, we should be prioritizing ensuring that we have sufficient housing for families. And when developers come in and slice and dice apartments into, 0 or 1 unit, 0 or 1 bedroom units, that's not families. You need at least 2 bedrooms for a family. But we need those 2 numbers in the dwelling unit category and what they were for those 8 census years. That would help us project what we can do to move forward as far as housing is concerned. I challenged the department, and I asked the council to challenge the department, alternatives to their suggestion in my census tract, which is to wipe out blocks of R1 into R2, and now they want to wipe out all these R2s and make them into R3s. That's called overcrowding. That's called destabilizing what are stable neighborhoods. That's unacceptable. They call it upzoning. That's downzoning. There are ways to increase population and dwelling units in my census tract, not their way, but a more positive, progressive way. I challenge them to tell you next Monday what that would be. They can do it in my census tract. They can do it in all 40-some-odd census tracts. There are alternatives to their slicing, dicing, slashing, and burning R2s to R3s. Totally unacceptable. I probably only have 30 seconds left, and I'll just let you know that I have specific suggestions when it comes to solid waste recycling, because I've been doing that longer than anybody else in this room. I can document that. But I saw concerns about the fact that we're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to recycling in the state of Rhode Island, but no specific suggestions as to what we do to change that. I have specific suggestions. That's why we need a hearing on that.
Thank you, Grant.
And I also have others in other categories. Transportation, you've heard some, I have others. We need a specific hearing on transportation, mobility, I guess they call it. And then we can also talk about education.
All right.
But that's why we need specific hearings. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thank
your
you, Grant. Doug Victor. Councilor Royas.
Greg, I'm sorry, just had a question. Because you've come up in multiple hearings, I appreciate you coming up. Why do you think it is that there was a mass exodus of residents leaving Providence?
Why there was, not anymore.
Well, decades ago. Why? What's your theory behind that?
Well, there are 2. Number 1, after World War II, there was this general out-migration from the urban areas nationwide because folks wanted to raise families and have a little elbow room. We didn't want to be overcrowded. They wanted to have a place for their kids to play in the backyard. I grew up second floor of a 3-family house. We didn't have places to play. You outgrew the backyard when you were in, 2nd grade. And then after that, you played in the streets. I've looked my share of windows, repaired every one. I learned a decade after I was in high school that the city of Providence had done not a universal comprehensive plan on everything from soup to nuts, but they had done specific comprehensive plans for the city in the 60s, and one of them was recreation and conservation. I said, wow, that's good to know, because I didn't have any place to play when I was a kid off the street. And so I looked it up, and I read it, and I said, this is impressive. This is amazing. And I told the department a year ago, I said, go look at that document and build from that. They never did it. So that was the reason why, in general, it occurred nationwide. Why did it occur in Providence? My sense is in Providence, 40%. I don't think, most urban areas lost 40%. I mean, they lost population, but I don't think they lost 40%. My question is, why did Providence lose 40%? That's your question. That's a good question. My answer is that let's look at the census tracts, which haven't changed, and there are less than 4 dozen of them, and see what the numbers are, and then we might be able to say, oh, that's what occurred, and that's why it happened. So we can be focused on the different census tracts. So we didn't lose 40%, generally, overall, universally, it was.
If I may, Greg, the reason why I ask, and I don't want to discount what you had said, but you've come up here several times, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of your theories is that folks left Providence for more leg room, so to speak. I also just want to, elevate, white flight as neighborhoods in Providence became racially diverse. I think there was a mass exodus to leave racially diverse neighborhoods that was getting increasingly diverse. So I don't want to take that off the table.
No, I hear what you're saying. I didn't experience that. I didn't sense that. I sense it was more just elbow room, and the suburbs grew, and because they provided more elbow room and recreational space too. I hear what you're saying. That was not my experience. But again, you heard me say this before. I'm a firm believer that the more information we have, better decisions we make. So let's get the basic fundamental information, and then perhaps we can have a focused approach towards accommodating more folks instead of this slash and burn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Dugarian, thank you for the history lesson. Doug Victor? Good evening.
Hello, thank you, everybody. This has been a pretty rigorous process, but good things sometimes come out of rigor. I just want to make a statement that I so appreciate our councilwoman's bearing in on student housing. And I think there's another piece there, and Sharon mentioned it tonight, is Airbnbs. What is the number of Airbnbs across the city, also combined with student housing, that is actually taking up, apartments that actually people could live in? So I'm not criticizing the Airbnb, however, it's a factor in how many housing units and apartments are available for regular people, and to build neighborhoods instead of having transients come in, whether they're students coming in for a semester or whether they're people coming in for the weekend or a week. So basically tonight I'd really like to speak about process. A couple things. It became very evident to me, and has been before, but it's somehow crystallized in a meeting, a community meeting we had with folks around the development of 400 Elmwood Avenue. So once again, the architect came with the plan, presented the plan, people got to comment. However, this process is something that being able to comment is terrific. However, what I would like to suggest is a revision of the way things are done. For instance, before an architect comes up with a plan, that the architect, and maybe somebody from planning and development, I'm not quite sure how this might work, but meets in the neighborhoods with residents and with neighborhood associations, because the residents know their neighborhoods. So to get input into have an exchange, hear the idea, and to get input into the design of a building, for instance. And I think there are so many people out there that feel helpless and voiceless and really hopeless in a way around these processes. There's really little place for people to fit in unless they can come to a meeting like this. And many people cannot for a lot of reasons. And And you folks in City Council, you know your constituent bases. And I'm pretty aware of the constituent bases in the south side of Providence. So what I'm asking is I'm asking for a relook to put something that I've called neighborhoods first. So it all gets sort of funneled to the neighborhoods and then comes back up, and a plan gets created. So the neighborhoods feel more listened to because there's so many times we don't feel listened to. And, you know, and some of us, including myself, have design backgrounds and degrees, you know, so we also have expertise, but we have on the ground living, you know, experience that could filter in. And that could really be very powerful in uplifting people and allowing voice in a way that voice is not allowed. So lessons learned, huh? Takes a long time sometimes to be able to verbalize those lessons that we're learning. And I would like to also say that, for instance, in the CPC process, we have a very short time to respond again to a pre-proposed plan before any of us came in on it. So what it really triggers, it oftentimes triggers a reactive situation. And that reactive situation, and I've seen it here, and I've seen it in the CPC, and it kind of pits people against people. This is wrong. This is doing harm to our community and to our city. I've seen at CPC some people pointing out other people who are homeowners and having disparaging comments about them. And that wasn't reined in until the very end of the comprehensive plan discussions at the CPC. That's problematic. That's very, very, very problematic. I've lived in the city 40 years. I love this city, and I am very concerned about how this city is headed. And you heard that from my testimony last time. So I just want to leave you with that, and I want to thank each one of our city council people who actually engaged people standing here tonight in conversation, because that's what we need. We need conversation instead of just being able to have 2 minutes or 3 minutes to react. And that sets the stage for something very different. And that is what we were asking as neighborhood associations to the planning and development from the very beginning. And that really never happened. We never really had a conversation. And I guess I want to ask you folks to think about why that is the case and how that has fueled this forward in a way that for many feel really exclusionary and lopsided. So thank you for your time, and you're doing the work. Thank you for the work.
Thank you. If anybody came in late, this meeting will be continued to next Monday, the 21st at 5:30. Okay, Joel Rocha.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I spoke last week and submitted a very lengthy letter. I apologize for that. I can get a bit wordy. I spoke regarding the last week's proposed amendments to the W3 and M2 zones. I want to thank the council for really listening to our perspective, which is what this process is about, and finding some middle ground. We are still digesting tonight's proposed amendments. I may have a few tweaks here and there that get us both to the same goal, but we appreciate the dialogue and look forward to the next step, the zoning process, to that continued dialogue as well. But we do appreciate the time on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Baptista.
Hello. Hi there.
Justin.
Hi there. In previous meetings, I've brought up a number of issues with the comprehensive plan. I won't repeat them all, but I will say this. Housing that is more than 4 stories don't work for every neighborhood. For example, Fox Point. One of Fox Point's best features is its view of the water, whether from Indian Point Park or out front under the pedestrian bridge. If above 4-story housing is placed throughout Fox Point, along Wickenden Street, for instance, that view will be greatly diminished. It would hurt Fox Point by making it less attractive to those who would want to live there. Housing doesn't have to be more than 4 stories high to have room for new residents. 4 stories provides plenty of housing space. There's also an issue of traffic. More than 4-story housing would bring in a lot of traffic. And in a place like Fox Point, with a limited space, and the number of housing being proposed for that area, that would be more traffic than the neighborhood can handle, especially if a number of the housing is occupied by college students. Traffic that would affect local businesses and disrupt the peace and quiet of a quaint neighborhood like Fox Point. Yet another way for the neighborhood to be less desirable to people on the outside. I don't have a time machine to see this future, you know. All I have is speculation based on some facts and common sense, you know. And I know what I'm saying, some people would perceive it as me being a nuisance to progress, that I'm bringing up a lot of backwards fuss, you know, that I should stay home, be quiet, leave this alone. And there's been a moment or two that I thought about that. But in the back of my mind, what I think to myself, to hell with it, because I love Providence, I love Fox Point. Even though I'm not a resident there, Fox Point has been a big part of my childhood there. I know a number of people there, Boys and Girls Club, Fox Point Elementary School, the Coffee Exchange will always have a connection to my heart. And I just think that more changes need to be made in the comprehensive plan to accommodate Fox Point. I mean, Bob Azar can softball as many minor accommodating changes as he wants, but more significant changes are required for neighborhoods with the size and character of Fox Point. And I know character is a very annoying, overused word at this point, but that's what Fox Point and other neighborhoods like it have, character. Because what is a neighborhood without character? Just a bunch of buildings. That's it.
Thank you. Richard Stang. Also like to acknowledge Council President Pro Tempore, Councilman Pichardo. Thank you for being here tonight. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. Richard Stang from Conservation Law Foundation in Providence. So I just want to commend everyone here because last week you put changes to this plan that were truly transformational. They prohibited 24 specific uses, made it very, very clear. You basically took to heart the voices and the demands of the residents in the environmental zones, environmental justice zones around Allens Avenue, and you said, we're going to do something about it. I applaud you for that. I'm back this week. Things have changed. Now, I just want to make clear about what last week's changes did not do. They did not shut down businesses. They did not get rid of jobs. And they certainly did not stop economic development. What it did do was provide crystal clarity going forward as to what would be allowed and what wouldn't be allowed. What we have today is mud. I'll use an example. Facilities that generate or result in harmful air pollution emissions. I can walk onto any of those properties in Allens Avenue and light up a welder, and I've just violated this provision. Now, obviously, we're not going to shut that down because you need welding for the green transition jobs. You need that. Do we need more asphalt plants? Do we need more Rhode Island recycled metals? What this does now is open the door to the people that were just here thanking you to bring the lawyers, bring the experts, bring the money, and fight any change. And they will win like they have over and over and over again. That's what is the end result of this. Just so everyone's clear, that is the end result. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Linda Perry.
Hello, and thank you for being here. And I want to thank all of you for doing the hard work. A lot has happened since last week and this week, as CLF, Conservation Law Foundation, has said. And I have to thank CLF for their being on top of it, let's put it that way. As a longtime resident in Ward 10 in Washington Park, I live in an environmental justice zone yet to be confirmed. We have increased diesel pollution just from evidence of what has happened in the past year on Allens Avenue and in the port. There has been unprecedented growth already, and that will change, that will increase. And in the new language, you have to protect the health and safety of the constituents, of the people of the city. And I don't see enough of that in this language, honestly. We need to decrease the diesel traffic and the diesel fumes from our neighborhoods, mine in particular. And listen and read the climate justice plan and see if there's further language that you can incorporate into this current red letter, which we don't have a copy of, but we went online and we looked at it. Now, in addition, I just want to make a point about the student housing issue in my ward, which is Johnson and Wales. 10 years ago, I met with the Vice President, Pelosi, and the President, and the then counselor, who was President of the council at the time, met with Johnson and Wales and said, you know, why don't you put on other floors on your dormitory campus? Who wouldn't want to live there by the water? And they said, well, they all want to live downtown. And I said, well, they're not. They're living in my neighborhood. They're renting rooms, creating a business of boarding homes, which I feel should be taxed on a commercial basis. Parking all over the street, making it really difficult. And we don't have the parties that I know of that PC has, but I thought that they restricted off-campus living to seniors. They haven't done that at Johnson & Wales. And I say for this whole comprehensive plan, the universities should be front and center in sharing their wealth and sharing and creating dorms for the students. That's my view. I appreciate the zoning law for solar on the west side of Allens Avenue and Allens Avenue itself. As you know, I'm a big proponent of solar and like to see that move forward in brownfields, of which we have a lot of on Allens Avenue and in Providence. If we decrease the parking minimums, we should naturally increase green space, which would help with drainage and the flooding issue that we have all over our city, especially in Washington Park. Allens Avenue, Thurbers and Allens floods all the time. To protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, I would just like to close with saying we need to eliminate diesel fumes everywhere we can. And we know that we have to cohabitate with industry and residents. That is a given. However, we need to do it sensibly and in a healthy manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Jerrison, I think, go. Yeah, please.
All right, well, it's good to meet you all. My name is Jair Amado Asensao. You call me Jair. I know that's a different name, it's Cape Verdean. I'm here to represent Joe Buck with the Black PAC, Black Political Action Committee. This is about restricting and limiting the construction of gas stations. This is a statement from the Black PAC. Without balance, there can be no progress. In the name of a supposed attempt to help the environment, you, Providence City Council, are inches from approving something that shows you are people who act with no understanding of a poor person's reality. Electric vehicles are completely unaffordable for the average person. You're placing the burden of the work on people that will just allow the already rich electric car companies to benefit. Just like mandatory insurance, pressure on the people without pressure on the companies makes false prices and manufactured demand. Our priority should be on low gas prices and making the electric vehicles affordable, not trying to put more strain on poor people's lives. Please make buying electric vehicles make sense, not a privilege, and we the people will follow. I know I heard that this is about really pushing for people to do electric. It makes sense. I understand why you're doing that, but again, there's no understanding of how that's gonna work in a regular person's life. Buying a Tesla is a ridiculous, high amount of money to do. People don't have that money, and I understand we don't want to affect the environment, but we don't hear or see anything that's really pushing for how are we making these steps like make sense for an average person, and that's really going to cause trouble. Also, you guys want to build buildings without parking spaces? It doesn't make sense to me either. If we don't have parking, I've heard about people closing, cutting down trees, paving their yards, doing all kinds of other stuff just to make it. If we're trying to make green space, we have to make, it all makes sense. I understand, Liza Birch and some of these people, they really want us to have bikes and to do things in a way that makes sense, but a lot of families have really tough situations, like they have to get to work, get to their kids, get to this, get to that, and doing it all through a bus system, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, and so we need cars to do a lot of those things. I don't have a car, but I don't have kids, you know what I'm saying? It's a different life. Some people need that, and again, if we don't have affordable cars, how are we going to switch to electric? We could make it more difficult to get gas or whatever, but again, it's just, to me, it doesn't make sense. Are we going to have a review process? By the way, this is a 10-year agreement that we're apparently signing up to. I don't even know if we have the full plan visible to be seen besides just those points that were public, but having a review, 10 years is a long time. Everything keeps changing. Like this election, we don't even know what's about to happen. Are we going to know, or are we just going to have to wait till 10 years from now to say, okay, was that good or bad? All right.
Thank you. Will Tower?
Can I just?
Absolutely, go
thank
right
you.
ahead.
Thank you very much for speaking. I know Councilman Gonsalves is going to probably speak to some of the points that you had made. But one of the things, and I want to preface with saying, I think the city is on the right track to make environmental sustainability one of, if not the most important thing that we do. It's absolutely what we should do going forward. My problem is very similar to what you had said, is the accessibility for everybody. The reality is that the median income in our city is, for a family of 4, is still just about $61,000. And we don't lay out a proper plan to bring all of this sustainability opportunity for everybody. And that's my continued struggle. And I would love for us as a council, since we're taking on such a visionary opportunity, to really lay out what accessibility looks like for everyone, because I think that in many of our neighborhoods, an opportunity for an electric vehicle in many of our families, it's just not an accessible point. It's sad to say that being more climate resilient and doing all these things in the right way, it's very expensive for the majority of the families in our communities. And I would like to be on record to say I'm fully in support when we can show exactly how every single one of our residents will get there. So thank you very much for bringing up that point. I really, as much as I am in full support of making sure that we continue to move forward in environmental sustainability as quickly as we can, it should be in tandem with making it accessible from a financial perspective for everybody, because we do see in many of our neighborhoods, the reality is that we can't. So thank you very much for speaking up on it.
Thank you. All right, Will Tower. Will, excuse me a second. Okay, so I have Will, I have 3 more people. I'm going to go through them first, and then I'm going to give each council an opportunity to speak on any of this subject, especially the councilors that have not spoken. So we'll end the night with the councilors addressing everyone that is here, if you wish to. Go ahead, Mr. Will.
Good evening. My name is Will Tower. I live at 62 Moore Street in Ward 9. I want to speak tonight in favor of the abolition on parking minimums. The existence of parking minimums increases substantially the cost to build new housing and the cost to open a new business in Providence, and it is an undue tax on businesses which do not need to use them. We should let the market determine the proper amount of parking, and if we remove parking minimums, it will be able to. Secondly, I want to speak in favor of the ability for residents to build housing up to 5 stories by right in the highest residential zone, R4, I believe. Housing that is 5 stories is commonplace in some of the most desirable neighborhoods in America, including nearby in Boston in the South End and the North End. If you walk around there, they are beautiful. Many of them have come to be historic, and they are beloved, and I am confused about why they're so controversial. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Feather Poirier.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Feather Poirier. I live at 62 Moore Street in Elmwood. I was born and raised in South Providence, and I've been a Providence resident for 30 years. And I just want to briefly speak in favor of the comprehensive plan as written and strong moving away from car dependency. I'd love to see the city abolish parking minimums and ban the construction of new gas stations. Other people have given the facts already, so I'll just say that on a personal level, traffic in Providence is dangerous and disruptive for my family. I think we've all experienced the noise, the reckless drivers, the traffic jams, and I've just seen this get worse over the last 30 years. I understand that it's hard to move away from car dependency. My sister lives in South Providence. She has kids. She doesn't have a car. It's not easy for her, but I think this is a necessary sacrifice we have to make.
Thank you. Jose Comey.
Hello, good
Hello.
evening. I'm just kind of here to talk about one key issue I think that I brought up before, and it's just about environmental injustice. I'm a current resident and homeowner from Washington Park, and I really like Providence, but you know, I'm not originally from here. I'm actually from city of Los Angeles, California. So it's something that you know, I know growing up. I remember some of my earliest memories is funny. When I was in elementary school, I remember we used to have to go inside because of like acid rain or pollution. It's just something that I don't, for whatever reason, it just followed me for a very long time. And getting here to Providence, you know, and leaving those beautiful sunsets that are caused by pollution in California, don't get the sunsets here, but I still kind of get the pollution. One of the big things here as a resident that I've noticed is that diesel trucks are allowed in residential area to idle. So in my circumstance, my neighbor in the back actually will run 6 trucks for probably 30 minutes every morning. So it creates this hazard. And mind you, somebody that grew up in really bad pollution, I've actually never had to go in and make a complaint to the city for this gap. And I've done that. I've actually called 311 and I've made an official complaint about that. And there's just a gap in the ordinance right now where diesel trucks are allowed to do that in residential areas. Back where I'm from, you know, even a food truck is now allowed to be parked in a residential area because of that concern of diesel in the community. Some of my background, I actually used to be a high school chemistry teacher, and I've taken advanced courses in organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and just to kind of boil it down, anytime you have any sort of diesel pollution, it is a big risk and a big concern to the residents. So that's kind of the optics that I'm giving today, is that it's a very common sense update that the ordinance needs to just be updated to ensure that the children who are in the community, the people who have asthma, again, it's an area of people of color. And I, just being that myself, I feel like I'm talking on behalf of those people who are not here today, where there's a gap. And again, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I've tried to pursue the current avenues, and I just have met a dead end, and really we need an update in the ordinance to bring in a gap measure. So thank you so much for your time and consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Stephen Alquist.
For hearing from me tonight.
Thank you.
I knew last week when you introduced the changes to the comprehensive plan that it was a big swing for the fences, and I suspected some things might change. I'm a little surprised by how much change there has been. I have 2 grandkids, 2-year-old and a baby, Lily and Isaac. I sometimes call Lily Furiosa because I feel like she's going to grow up in that Mad Max world, and I want her to be the toughest she can be because it's not looking good for us. I saw in the package of public comments here the piranha-like bites from the industry lobbyists and lawyers trying to undermine the plan as you were putting it together. And on the way in, I ran into a bike lobbyist. One of those guys told me that the idea of banning gas stations faces a veto, or a possible veto. The mayor's office hasn't confirmed that. This plan won't affect existing businesses, as I think Richard said from the CLF. They're grandfathered in. The concern of lobbyists and lawyers is about the future of polluting industries, the kind we don't want anymore. They're not concerned about what's here. They're looking at their future and what they can lobby for and do. And here's the thing. I care about all kids, not just the ones who are related to me. The mayor might not. These lobbyists and lawyers certainly don't, because I listen to them all the time at the State House, and they don't give up anything for the future. They just care about money now. But I really need the city council to care, and I really need you to act on the environmental aspects of it. I don't know as much about the zoning, so I'll stay out of that, but you need to act on this, and you need to be strong. And if you need people to support you, I will tell people to come out here, and they will support you. But you need to be strong and do the right thing, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so that concludes our list and our public hearing. So now I'll open up to council members that are here. If you would like to speak on the complaint tonight, and we'll start with those that have not spoken. Anyone? Councilwoman Graves.
Yes, I'd like to speak on several things.
Okay.
The parking limit for the buildings, so they're kind of conjoined to me, want to raise these buildings super high, and I realize that the housing stock in the city is very limited. But if we keep raising these things high and then we don't have adequate parking for them, where are those cars going to go? I have a building that's almost completed in my ward. Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
Okay. I have a building in my ward that is already, is going to be 38 units. It's on Chalkstone and Camden Avenue. Chalkstone is narrow, no parking in that spot. Camden Avenue is narrow, and there's parking, but there's a garage over there that already takes up all the little parking. So where are we going to put these cars if we don't have parking for them? We have to have some type of parking for these mass buildings. Most of the streets in Providence, especially on the older neighborhoods, Onlyville, my area, Wansat, we don't have a lot of big streets. So I can understand why you say, okay, we need, it's going to cost more money, and this is why we have to eliminate the parking situation. It's going to cause all other issues. But the biggest issue that we're going to cause is the fact that people already have no place to park their cars. I am an owner of a 3-tenement house. Each apartment has at least one car. My driveway can hold 2 cars, and I have two-car garage. We're already squeezed in, so that means 2 people don't have a parking. We don't have overnight parking in my area. They get ticketed if they're out there too long. So what are we going to tell the people? Well, we're going to build you a beautiful home, but you can't have a car. And we're not going to provide a place for you to park your car, So if you go out there, you're going to get ticketed every night. So they might as well move into a more expensive apartment that has a parking lot. I mean, I thought the whole point is we want more affordable housing. But if we're going to keep we're going to give you something in one hand and take it back in the other, it makes no sense to me. So I have an issue with that. The other thing is this gas station thing. I agree with the letter that we're saying. The majority of the people in my community are driving old cars because that's what they can afford. And they're praying each day that their car don't break down, so they can get to all the places and do all the things that they and their family needs to do. If we limit or prohibit more gas stations and push for electric cars, that's great for the people that can afford it. But most of the people in Providence cannot, So I don't think we can keep shoving stuff down people's throats and put it on the backs of the people that are already struggling. All these things are going to all fall on the people that have the least. We cannot do that. And let's face it. If we don't let more gas stations come in, people start getting a monopoly. If you don't think the price is not going to go up, then I don't know what you're thinking, because it will, So again, we're going to be back in gas is going to be too high. You don't have a place to park your car, so you're going to have to pay those tickets for overnight parking. We don't have enough, the people, when it comes time for them to clean the streets, they're going to get another surprise because now they got all these cars in there. They cannot clear the snow. People are going to get penalized for that. And then I've seen people in Washington Park fighting over parking spaces because somebody has to walk they live in New York Avenue. Now they got to walk to Indiana Ave and way up on the other side because there was no parking at all on on their street. So we're going to cause so much animosity amongst neighbors. So it's back to this have and have-nots. It's a great idea. I too would like to have cleaner air. I too would like to have a greener space. But we're not there yet. And let's be truthful. Did we do enough research on what the electric cars are going to be? Because from what I understand, making them is just as bad when it comes to pollution and all that other stuff as it is in making a car that runs with gasoline. As I understand, there's issues with the batteries. We're in a cold part of the country. They don't like the cold. So you're going to have issues with charging up those batteries. You cannot go as far on those batteries as you can on gas. We don't have enough the stations for the charging stations. So what are we saying? We're proposing things that we don't even have solutions for. We're proposing things that we have not even really fully investigated. Until we do, I do not believe that we should be saying these things and proposing these things when we don't have any true solution. If we don't have it, why are we telling the other people that this is what they should be doing? Because I'm going to be true with you. My car is almost 12 years old. And that's the car that I can afford. And that's the car I'm going to continue to drive. So for you to try to tell me that I have to change to something else, and I don't have any little kids, but I still have the other things that I need to do. There's daycare issues that people got to pay for. They got to transport their kid back and forth. Now, we're just adding more and more pressure, more and more burdens on the shoulders of the ones that have the least. For those that can afford it, I applaud you. Please go out and get your electric car. And if you can afford to buy a couple for the people next door to you, that would be wonderful too. But if you can't afford it for all of us, don't try to force us into something. And that's what I'm getting. I feel like I'm being forced into something that I know I cannot afford. I know my children, my grandchildren cannot afford it. So I do not feel like I should be voting for something like this. And I need to look around at Smith Hill, my area of Mount Pleasant, the little areas that I have. We are working class poor. That's what we are. We're proud of our area. We're proud that we can get up and do the things that we can do. But we also know we have limited funds. We know what our capabilities are. I think we need to stop trying to cater to some and look at all. We need to start looking at our city as a whole, which is what Councilwoman Peterson was trying to say. We as a city cannot afford it right now. We as a city, as a council, need to investigate a little bit more before we put things on the table. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else that has not spoken first? Councilwoman Anthony, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, first of all, I'd like to thank my council colleagues for the inclusion of design standards. I very much appreciate that. I think we can all benefit from it. I did appreciate the fact that Marissa Brown asked for a design review committee. I would love that too, but I'm happy with the fact that we have design standards, and I think we'll all benefit from that, and I do not think it's going to inhibit development, so I really, really do appreciate that. I will say that I think that while I appreciate the sentiment on the abolishing the gas stations, I guess I'm a little surprised, and I know I was sitting here, but I'm not on the ordinance committee, but I think there's unintended consequences as carefully, as very articulately put forth by my fellow councilwoman. And I've been thinking a lot about it tonight. And it came up by surprise at the last meeting. We hadn't really talked about it. And now we've had a week to think about it, but unfortunately the committee chose to make a motion on the floor to add that amendment to the comp plan, and what that does effectively is prohibit the rest of us who aren't on the ordinance committee from actually weighing in on that issue. So I feel like we may have been a little premature. I think we need to think about that. I'm not sure how we undo what's already been done, but I think we really need to give that some thought over in the next week. I am also going to say that I am not supportive at all of touching our parking minimums for the same reason. I understand the environmental impact. I'm, as you know, a strong proponent of resiliency and making sure that we're moving to a more resilient future, and I understand why cars are certainly not what we want in our city, but until we have a robust transit system that we can rely upon instead of our cars. I think to, at all, reduce our parking minimums is just not right. There's just too many people in this city that have to rely on their cars, and I know I'm talking from a different perspective, different ward, but I do have a lot of elderly people in my ward who, don't use the transit system because they can't use the transit system. I think I know we're trying to look into the future, but I just think at this point, we have streets that are crowded enough so that you can't move an emergency vehicle down the middle. And I just think we're not heading in the right direction if we touch that at all. And then the other couple of things I do want to relook at, I thank Richard Stang for coming up from CLF, and I very much want to look at our new amendments. I'd hate to water those down at all, because I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to take a really strong stand on the port. And while we may ruffle some feathers, I want to look at that issue again, because we really can make a difference in the port, and that's been long overdue. So I'm just going to say I'd like to look at that a little more this week. And also that I'm just absolutely thrilled that inclusionary zoning is in our comp plan. I mean, I think really to adequately address our affordability issue, the only way, in my opinion, is to do inclusionary zoning. So I'm just so happy that that's part of our plan. And I think thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Pro Tem Pichardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just wanted to reiterate a couple of things. One is that I want to thank all of the people that have taken their time, come to the City Hall and provide testimony, and those who are watching us or have written letters. And I thank the Ordinance Committee and all of us for extending that period of time where we're going to have another meeting, another saying. I also will reiterate in terms of the amendments that was proposed last time, and I've expressed some concerns in terms of the limitation of gas stations, and I see where the direction we're going to. I mean, yes, we passed the climate zero climate change plan vision, zero vision. Is that what it's called, right? Vision Zero, and we're being bold, as my colleague has said. But, one thing that I continuously reflect on is that the constituents that we, or at least that I represent, especially in the South Side, as has been said, we are the struggling working class. The city of Providence is a majority-minority community. We know where the concentration of challenging finances are there. We get up every day, and we want to make sure that our kids are also have that opportunity to live here in Providence. I advocated last time in terms of more language around the education, the comprehensive plan, and it's there. It's working to a certain extent of the plan that we are working on to ensure that we receive our schools back from the state. But I also recognize the fact that the demographics of our public school kids in the city of Providence is 70% Latino. Pretty much in the city of Providence is close to 80% of minorities. And this is a plan for 10 years, that in 2034, they're all going to get an opportunity to cast another vision, a comprehensive plan for that electrical and AI world. And yes, we are visioning, we are creating that environment. But we also know that for the next 10 years, we're all going to be here. I know I plan to be here unless God tells me differently. But we're all continuously struggling to pay our bills. Electricity just going to up 31%. Rent, water, sewer, rents continue to go up. Yes, a constituent just indicated that last night proposal right on Elmwood Avenue was pushed forward for more units, the density. But there's a problem with not having enough parking. And that's going to be a challenge, and because it does create a situation where residents are parking in front of your house, and all of a sudden you come out and say, why are you parked in front of my house? And so I encourage everyone to continue writing and letting us hearing from you. But I also implore our constituents and our colleagues to really, let's look at some more of that language in terms of clarifying. One, limiting the gas stations. Two, the parking situation. And then three, ensuring that we keep in mind the working poor that continuously, every day, they're getting poorer and poorer and poorer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Councilman Goncalves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say this was really beautiful dialogue from all of our colleagues. And I just want to say also, I want to thank everyone who has poured hours and hours into this process, whether it be the staff, whether it be the clerks, whether it be counselors, whether it be the general public who came out and gave testimony. We saw people literally pour their hearts over this plan. This is consequential. It's the next 10 years of what we're going to do in the city of Providence. And, you know, there's a lot of things in this plan that I think my neighborhood has been advocating for, and unfortunately, they're not going to get it. We have seen development ravage some of our communities, some not for good, maybe some because we want to address the affordability crisis. But I think what we have to also ask ourselves is, who is it going to benefit? Is it going to benefit the people who continue to build, build, build? Or is it going to benefit the people who need affordable housing in our communities? It was this council that proposed inclusionary zoning, not the city administration. It was this council that proposed anti-displacement language in the comprehensive plan. We continue to whitewash policy because we're not centering people. We have heard time and time again from our constituents about what they want. We've heard that they want more neighborhood protections in Fox Point. They didn't get that. They got more upzoning. We have heard from people in the Port of Providence that they want more stringent protections against polluters who are polluting a community that's disproportionately people of color. And we keep buckling as a council because there are large special interests out there that are basically telling us that we should change the language as opposed to protect our people. So we've got a lot of work to do. And I would say that with all due respect, I encourage people to read the language about what we're proposing here, specifically on gas stations. The comprehensive plan that was proposed to us actually said discourage new gas stations. We decided to make a bold stand and say prohibit. That's not a drastic change in language. And I don't know what changed all of a sudden. Are we going to scapegoat this issue because there are lobbyists maybe in the Port of Providence that are telling us that we need to change the language? I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And the no construction of new gas stations isn't eliminating gas stations. Gas stations will exist, and they will likely exist in perpetuity in and outside of Providence. Plenty of gas stations in municipalities around us. Plenty of gas stations right here in the city of Providence. This isn't a mandate to buy an electric vehicle. So where are we getting that information? No one's going to come to your house and say, you need to buy an electric vehicle. So I just caution folks to be careful about using that language, because what we say really does matter. And we have said that we want to have a bold climate justice plan. In order for us to get that, we actually have to put our money where our mouth is, and we have to make some bold stances here. And if we want to address pollution in our communities, particularly our communities that are disproportionately, as my colleague mentioned, communities of color, then we've got to do something about it. And it's not just about this gas station thing. I'm open to making amendments based on what our colleagues say is right. But I think we also had an extraordinary opportunity here to address, I would say, arguably, one of the most important things that should have centered this entire plan, and that was, how do we make Providence more affordable for the people who already live here? How do we make Providence more affordable as people are continuing to be displaced and disrupted in their own communities? And I'm not sure if we're going to be meeting that moment. Because when it's all said and done, all of this upzoning that's going to occur everywhere is going to allow for more and more development, and I get it, we need that to grow our tax base. And, you know, I would say I'm arguably a pro-development person. But what happens to the people who live in our neighborhoods who continue to get pushed out year after year after year? When we come back 10 years from now, the city of Providence that we know today is not going to be the city of Providence that we know 10 years from now. And when we look around, I hope that we remember the decisions that we made in this chamber. Did it result in people being able to stay in their neighborhoods? Did it result in that elderly person on a fixed income being able to stay in her home when the property valuations around her, because of all of the development, because of all of the upzoning, has resulted in her property taxes increasing dramatically to the point where she can't afford to stay in her home? We've seen this occur in the past. I, in particular, have been sounding the alarm about things like urban renewal. Urban renewal pushed out the people in my neighborhood, my family, my neighbors, in the 60s in Fox Point. All of those people are completely gone. As developers continue to develop in these communities, demolish properties, push people out of neighborhoods, guess what? This might be urban renewal all over again. And I don't mean to get on my soapbox here, but let's continue to work together, because we have a lot of work to do. And if inclusionary zoning is what we really care about, if affordability is what we care about for our neighbors, if ensuring that people who are in the Port of Providence aren't being poisoned by the pollution, then let's step up and let's do it. We're going to have to lead. It's going to be the council. Because the plan that we were presented with didn't have some of the protections that I think we are all fighting for. And so I hope that we'll continue to fight for those protections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. I represent Ward 15, and I represent my constituents. And I understand that every colleague have their own concerns about this comprehensive plan that we have. I noticed that my ward, they obsess to put bike lanes. bike lane here, a bike lane there, a bike lane here. Trying to push my people out, trying to make them to buy a bike, to ride a bike from there all the way to Massachusetts or to Alberta where they work at. They don't work around the corner. They save money to buy a shitty car, like a Toyota Corolla that might find today's days at $1,500 to go to work. Because in my community, the families is not just husband and wife. They got 3 kids. And I'm very proud to say that, like, the Latino community is happy with 3, 4, 5. Because they don't think about one will be enough. No. They say, God willing, how many I get? They get it. And they worry about to buy a car to go to work. And I see in this comprehensive plan that I trying to make more accessible, like sidewalks, bike lanes, and force the people to get used to this. Our city is not ready for. Our city is not ready for, not even for an EV charger. Not saying to buy a car or an electric car. If you go around the city, you can count the EV charger with your hand. And won't be enough. And that's why the 10 years is a long way. It's a long shot. We don't know we're going to be here tomorrow, and that's in the next 2 years. But we have to think today, and we have to make the right decision for everybody in the city. It's like my colleague was saying, if you had the money to go buy an EV car, go for it. Enjoy it. God bless you. I don't have the money to go buy one. I have a used one. I always buy used. Lasts longer. And that's the reason we're here, to make the right decision for the next 10 years. I don't want people to point the finger at me saying, because of you, we are in this mess. By cutting off the cord to build new gas stations. You're cutting jobs. By the way, you're cutting jobs if you do that. We should think about how we can create more jobs revenue, more manufacturers, more businesses, make it like a welcome sign to the city. Nobody want to know about the city of Providence to come and open business here. Not counting about the state. So we have to start thinking how to make it welcoming to new businesses and to create more laws that will be flexible to open a business in the city of Providence. We can start working to the future for climate change, but little by little. Don't close the hose of water at one shot. Leave a little drip on it. But if we try to cut it off by the legs, we're not going nowhere. And I call all my colleagues to think about it, and the people who's smarter than me, who went to college, have a degree, to read this comprehensive plan very slowly and give us ideas how we can make the right decision for the future. I want to say thank you to everybody who came today, and let's work together. But before we make a decision, better get a parachute before you jump on the air. Because that's what we're trying to do with this kind of laws that we're trying to pass for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else? Hearing none. All right, so that concludes tonight's public hearing. Excuse me a second. That was the fourth public hearing. We will be back here on October 21st at 5:30 for the fifth public hearing. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilor Peterson, second by Councilor Vargas. All in favor, aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn made by Councilor